without waiting for too long, let's start our first panel. And may I request Bruce to come here? Is Teri here? Oh, welcome. So Bruce Tuchman, Teri Schwartz. Bruce is a president of AMC Global and Sundance Channel Global. Teri Schwartz, she is the dean of UCLA School of Theater and Film and Television. James Veraldi, welcome. Senior VP Strategy, Fullscreen. Mike Murphy, Head Media Partnerships, Intel Corporation. Dr. Mihir Parikh, he's our strategic thought leader at our firm and PhD in artificial intelligence. So I think we can start. Hello, how are you? Welcome, everyone. So nice of you. Thank you. As you all know, this session is about the future disrupted, fall of the gatekeepers and rise of the platformers. Is sharing the new paradigm? Are we moving towards completely collaborative economy? What is true convergence? Is it merely across distribution platforms, or is it a mutually respected existence amongst creators, distributors, and consumers? Content remains king today, perhaps more than ever before. But how will we monetize in a future of when complete democratization occurs? So in this session, we'll examine the future of content creation and digital distribution, social networks, gaming, working of payment systems, and so on and so forth. So without much ado, I'll request, I think, Shekhar, why don't you again come and speak a little bit? No. And we would love to hear everybody else. So thank you.
I've taken up too much time. I'm going to start. So which one of our esteemed panelists is going to take up the fundamental question? Yeah, Shekhar, it's all very well to talk about this. Fullscreen. I've been reading all about what you guys are doing. In fact, I have a company that's actually making a deal with you right now in India. But so, see, we're selling ourselves also here. But the idea is like monetization. It keeps getting thrown. Yeah, wonderful, fantastic. How do you monetize it? Question.
How do you monetize? How do you monetize what? Just content in general?
Yes. How do you monetize content where the content is all about sharing and chaotic?
So YouTube.
What's that?
So YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, so people that don't know Fullscreen is the largest global, what's called an MCN, a very abused term, but a multi-channel network, which is a collection of YouTube channels. You know, and there's a lot of sort of interest in this space in India. I think every entertainment company in India wants to have an MCN, even though most don't know what that means. So what is an MCN? So, you know, we have 55,000 creators in our network. Those range from maybe some more household names, maybe not to this audience, but certainly a younger generation like a Shane Dawson and a Grace Helbig and a Fine Brothers. People that do sustain themselves and make a lot of money on YouTube just through their rev share. Down to sort of emerging talent, folks that are just general hobbyists through people that will one day become the next Fine Brothers or Grace. So, you know, YouTube has certainly changed the way that people can distribute and monetize content. It's still not a great first window for monetizing premium content, which is a mistake a lot of people make. You know, if you are a vlogger, if you're making videos at home, if you're doing sketch comedy with your friends and you're putting minimal dollars into production, YouTube can be a great window for monetization. YouTube really is more about building a brand. And I always tell people that most great YouTubers are not necessarily great content creators. They're great marketers and they're great brand builders. What you do with that brand, how you monetize that brand can go in a lot of different directions. We have talent that sell push 20 to 30,000 units of merch a month. They might only make $5,000 a month on their ad revenue from YouTube. They might make $100,000 a month of pushing merchandise. We have talent that go into more of a transactional via video on demand, using the brand they build as a vehicle to that. But you know, if you're a creator on YouTube, it's about consistency, it's about having patience, and it's about having sort of a bigger goal. Because YouTube does not monetize premium content at the rate most people think it does from the outside. But it is a great place to build a brand and to build something that can, you know, you can extend beyond that form of distribution. So I don't know if that answered the question. But that's sort of like my world is very much in the YouTube world and the social media world, and these sort of emerging creators, and sort of nurturing them and shepherding them from inception, you know, through, you know, becoming, you know, really powerful entertainment brands in their own right.
Is that, yeah, is it true that there was an article in Variety that the top 10 brands amongst teenagers in America were actually YouTubers, not sports stars, not film stars?
Yeah, they had the top 20 celebrities, and they, for 13 and 24-year-olds, and over 10 of them were YouTubers. And this is compared to like Jennifer Lawrence, Taylor Swift's, Justin Bieber's, and 10 of those 20 were YouTube talent.
So let's see if you're out of date. Let me be provocative. How many of you actually can name one of those top 10 brands, YouTubers? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, you guys are in date. Great. One name? Anybody? Okay, great. All right. So Teri.
Yeah.
How do you teach that? How do you teach what's happening in the world? I know how to teach film.
You do, and you do it very well, I might add. I just want to sit and listen to you for the rest of the day.
Oh,
Can I do that?
Please
Don't we
hire
all
me.
want to do that? Yes. Well, thank you. I actually prepared some notes, and I tried to
Yes.
address the sections that you gave to us as panelists. And first of all, let me introduce myself. I'm the Dean of the School of Theater, Film, and Television at UCLA. And I'm happy to be here on the USC campus. I'm a hometown girl, so I root for everybody. But I like to think of us as, are you a USC? Or?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right. Come on, move over here. Okay. But I like to think of us as the storytelling school, and I love the fact that you were talking about story earlier. And, you know, at the UCLA School of Theater, Film, and Television, we believe that stories can be told in an infinite number of ways, from the radically ancient to the radically modern, and across a multitude of traditional and digital platforms, and in ways certainly not imagined before. And we're actively exploring the intersection of story, performance, and technology, and how technology can finally, at long last, be in service of story and not the other way around. And I think that so many of these conversations have been about, you know, monetization, technology, but I think the storytelling point and how we create is left out of the equation as an essential part of the equation. So we're really exploring that intersection of story, performance, and technology. And, you know, as one of the premier, as the one actually premier professional school for entertainment and performing arts education in the world that has film, television, digital media, animation, and theater all under one roof, we are really uniquely positioned to take the approach to now tear down the silos across all of these disciplines and become completely interdisciplinary. And I think these are the silos that have long separated faculty, students, staff, technologists, innovators, and artists from one another. At UCLA TFT, we are actively reimagining and disrupting, and I've taken this on as the dean of the school, to disrupt what it means to be a film and theater school, and to reimagine entertainment and performing arts education as an interdisciplinary enterprise grounded in humanistic storytelling, global diversity, social responsibility, and certainly where technology and innovation cut across all of those. And we're really endeavoring to answer the question, what world are we preparing our students for? And that certainly is a central question for today. I just ran here from campus where I welcomed the entire incoming class for the new academic year. And as I was looking out and thinking I was coming here, I was thinking these are the creators and the leaders of the future that are going to be working with all of you and really helping us to define where the future is going. So we believe that story can be used for good. I don't want to forget this in the equation of what it's about. You know, that story could be used for good. It could be used for positive social change, to illuminate the human spirit. You certainly do that brilliantly in your films. I'm such a fan of your work. and to help us make sense of our lives and the world around us. So as we talk about monetization and platforms and all of it, it's like, what are we delivering over these platforms? I think that's the central question. And we believe that you could not only delight and entertain and certainly make money, but that you can also enlighten, engage, and inspire change for a better world, no matter the platform, no matter the technology. And that's our vision at our school. So in thinking about the future, you asked us to think a little bit about it. I like to think about it this way, that we know the structures of the past can no longer support our ambitions for the future, and that is around how content is created, financed, distributed, and experienced. We also know that technology is the game changer, for sure, and we know that the world is more interconnected and digitalized and globalized as a result, and as a result, more people have access to the arts and to media, and that's a very good thing. We also know that the world is more networked and social, and that the changing role of audiences is influencing and impacting the way stories are told and experienced, and I find that a very exciting thing as well. And we also know that the digital transformation has forever changed how stories can be created, captured, distributed, and paid for, including on-demand and from on-demand to collaborative creation, like cloud filmmaking, which has become a very interesting way to create the shared experience that you're talking about, and crowdsourced funding, just to name three. And I think that gives us a lot of responsibility and also is another very exciting approach. And I think that the traditional gatekeepers are falling away, and the financial barriers for selling and sharing stories are now beginning to equalize. And new processes, techniques, and venues, most importantly, diverse voices, diverse global voices. This is where I think the new stories and the new storytellers are going to emerge from, are going to drive this shared social impact. So to thrive in the future, I was thinking about, you have to do three things. We need to, as a dean of a major film and theater school in the world, the students are going to invent the future, but it's my job and our job to create an environment where that's more than likely to happen. So we need to identify, recruit, and cultivate and graduate hyphenates now. The next generation of, we talk about next generation narrative, well, this is the next generation of creative talent and storytellers, very diverse storytellers that can move fluidly between technologies, disciplines, and the creative industries. And these are the people who are going to move human history forward, we believe, by embracing the intersection of the arts and the sciences, that this is where the greatest levels of innovation are going to emerge from. Number two, to create and reshape emerging technologies rather than reacting to them, which is what I was talking about earlier. We're always in this reactive mode, but how are we going to shape technologies so that they're in service of great storytelling? And we're seeing new forms already popping up, from global interactive theater pieces, that we're working on. We're doing a two cities project between London and LA with interactive theater, which is going to be really interesting, and sharing playwrights and actors and designers and directors, to role-playing games, along with other forms of very collaborative cloud-based filmmaking, and also augmented reality, which has emerged as well. And finally, I think we need to enlarge the sandbox and engage a very broad set of technology, industry, and creative partners who can not only help us but benefit. Convergence, very quickly, I think convergence means now, doesn't mean what it used to, that the distribution channels and screens have become much more agnostic and therefore more integrated. And we now have gotten over, I think, and maybe you would all agree, that the magic of the multiple screens and venues, and that with new technologies we could start to really focus on what the next generation of narrative is going to be. And our students, who are the storytellers of the future, are going to have to make creative, technical, and even business choices now. Everybody has to be their own company now, and they have to know that their content can be consumed in this new convergent environment, whether it's a traditional screen, a live venue, in a dynamic interactive environment, a 3-inch mobile screen, or even on a large format screen like IMAX. And finally, in terms of monetization, I'll end here, which is, I come from the world of making films, and we're done. Okay, we're done. Content is king and queen, it always will be, and I think that it's our responsibility to really tell stories that matter, and no matter the technologies or the platform, and the money will always follow once we figure that out. So thank you.
Very good.
Yep.
I want to open this out to the rest of the panel, and anybody takes this up, are the technology companies the new studios? Is content and technology working together? I go to Silicon Valley and they're talking a different tune. I come here and we talk a different tune. Is it time for technology companies and content producers to really get together? Or will technology run away from us?
Are you asking me?
No, I'm asking the rest of the panel. Anybody wants to take that up? Or anybody? Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
on Teri's,
Sorry.
oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
On Teri's theme, it's about the content. Everyone gets sometimes lost in all the technologies and the terminology, but it's really hasn't changed in thousands of years of human history. It's about the stories, and people are going to follow that. I think the technology companies sometimes lose that in getting very excited about their new technologies. It's really all about the content, in my view.
I have a slightly different view on things. I don't think content is king. Content is such a short term now that content comes, disappears, comes, disappears. Creativity is the king. Content will come, disappear as fast as Twitter stories come and go. So IP protection and all those issues that Shekhar mentioned very well, that has changing because we always think about content as a king and we need to protect the king. Well, it's no longer king. What we need to do is constantly shift our position through creativity, through innovation, so that we constantly get the mind share of the people or the target market that we want to attract. And it is shifting. And that shift is something that is done through the convergence. And the convergence, when I say, is not just convergence of technology and platform. That's an old story. Convergence of processes, how you create content, how you create, how you market it, how you brand it. Co-creation and co-consumption is what is happening, as opposed to the old days where you have pre-production, post-production, very strict boundaries between all those processes. Those processes are all blurring. You are in a constant mode of creation. Shekhar sends out one story on Twitter every day. That's a constant creation of story. It's going back to what Shekhar said earlier about there is no end. It's a constant creation. So creation is the king, not the content. So forget about content. That's my view.
So you're saying content and creation are two different things. Everybody's going to take a lot of umbrage to that, but that's interesting.
I'll
Yes,
take
sir.
a bit of a different perspective. I also don't think content is king. What I think is king is what has always been kind of a taboo word and practice with any filmmaker, content creator, which is marketing. Traditionally, the creation and the marketing process are so siloed out. In traditional filmmaking, there's a group of people to decide if something's going to be good and should be made. And then long after that, does it go to the group of people to decide how to actually position that and get people into it. Those are the lines that are blurring to me. And I think content is incredibly important, but I think marketing is king. And I think going forward, the best content creators need to be great marketers. They need to understand that because of the barriers of distribution are being broken down in a super fragmented world. If you don't understand marketing, and I don't mean understanding how to use AdWords. Marketing is a big business and involves just positioning. How do you brand something? How do you deliver something? Marketing and distribution have always been very tied together, but to me, marketing is king. And I think the best content creators will need to be great marketers. And I think that, to me, is more the paradigm shift that's happening, more so than content versus distribution. I think it's marketing, which has always been a taboo thing for true filmmakers and creators. I think they need to embrace it. They need to understand it. They need to study it and need to own it. That, to me, is super important.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, you can talk about anything you want.
No, I love this theme. First of all, it's great to be at USC. I know we have the dean of UCLA theater school here, but I have a nephew in school here and a niece who graduated a year ago, so go Trojans. But in any event, I think students, it's important to think about them in terms of the new media landscape. Now, I take a different view that I don't think anyone watches a technology for the sake of watching a technology. It's all about the content. I agree with the marketing issues. It's harder now because there's so many ways to access content. but in some sense, it's no different than it was 100 years ago when you could read a book, you could go to theater. It's still all that, but there's so many ways now to get at it. You've got to market it, but really you can't forget that at the end of the day, people just want to be, at least in terms of entertainment, they want to be entertained. I come from the traditional subscription and ad-supported TV business. I say traditional because when I started in it 25 years ago, I met Nishith 20 years ago in India. He helped me to launch MTV, Nickelodeon, MGM, and now AMC. And I remember that was the traditional media, and I now describe it to my kids. That was the internet then. It was cool then. Kids are really, and students are really different. When we talk about the future of media and TV in particular, everyone is lamenting and panicked about the demise of the traditional television business. Yet, all the threats are here today. And I partake in all the threats, all right? I watch, and I'm unusual. I travel a lot. I watch most of my television now on an iPad. Yet, I just dropped a lot of money on a television set. I still subscribe to cable. There's something, that is the predominant form in which we consume TV, and it will be for some time, despite all the challenges out there. But I look at students, and the question I ask everyone on the panel and myself is, when I talk to students, I always ask the question, now, you know, I was speaking to some law school students, so they're all gonna graduate and make some money. And I said, now, once you start making some money, are you gonna subscribe to cable television? That was my dream 25 years ago. I was gonna get my own cable subscription. And they said no. And that worries me. That's gonna be the shift. So I don't think we're gonna see the shift. I think we're gonna see some erosion in the next few years on TV consumption because it's convenient to watch on iPads and things like that. But it's a generational thing. And I'm not sure what the answer is to that. If young people are gonna shift out completely and view TV the way they've been viewing it. The random thought, but the other issue I think about is my daughter. She asked for a flat panel TV on her wall. I said, why do you want that? She's 11. She goes, well, my older sister has one. I go, yeah, but you don't watch TV. And she goes, oh, yeah, I just want a big iPad on my wall. So that, to me, frames the whole question. What's going to happen to the industry from my perspective and what I am involved in when this generational shift comes?
Well, you know, as a technology provider, I'm a little bit biased here, but I think this notion of content versus technology, that's not really the right question. I think it's really, what can technology do to increase the size of the content business? I think to the point of TV everywhere and video on demand, people are watching more TV now that they have much easier forms to access content on mobile platforms. I think as TV everywhere, authentication has become much more seamless from the operators. I think it still has a long ways to go, but it is getting easier, and I think the World Cup proved that people will watch live television, live sports on a phone. In fact, as a proud USC Trojan graduate, I watched our game on Saturday night on my Samsung Galaxy, and it was a perfectly fine experience. You know, the other thing is that user experience on content services is incredibly critical. As Netflix and Amazon and iTunes continue to evolve their product portfolio, I think discoverability becomes really the key vector here. And because there's so much content out there and there's going to be just an endless amount of content being created, but whoever can provide the right contextual experience to recommend content before you even realize that you need it, to me, that's really a key vector. And the content community, quite frankly, I think it behooves them to work with those providers to ensure that the content they're intending for the particular demographic is reaching them and using and embracing technology. You know, going back to your comments about, you know, the girl wanted the iPad on the wall, I guess I'll do a shameless promotion. I mean, these devices are only going to get thinner and more attractive. And to your point, people aren't watching content because of a device, but I think these devices are getting, you know, to the point where they're almost like a television experience, except they're actually mobile. So this right here is going to be the world's thinnest tablet that we're launching in partnership with Dell later this year. It's 6 millimeters wide. It has a 3-dimensional camera array on the back, which enables virtual reality type of experiences. In fact, we have a partnership with USC that we've been in partnership for years called the Leviathan Project, which is basically enables a virtual reality character of a whale that you can look through this device and you could see it go throughout the entire room as if it was right here in the room. We demoed it at CES. And Anjali Shastri, who's actually one of the main designers of this device, she's actually here and over there. So if you want to talk more about this device, you can come find Anjali.
And give all the panelists a free device.
But technology providers like ourselves and others in Silicon Valley, we're going to continue to invest in content security technology, content playback technology, as well as audio technology so that you have a television-like experience on a device that you can, more or less carry around everywhere in your life. And, we're really looking forward to the time when some of the traditional content windows may potentially start to ease. I mean, the announcement that Netflix made yesterday about day and date theatrical availability, that's really interesting because we feel that we've developed devices that will protect that content in these types of platforms where it can give content providers the confidence to distribute your content in ways that you haven't done before.
So I have a question, sorry, may I ask it? Content is not just about delivery platforms, it's about computing power, it's about chips, right? So how much of your time at Intel goes in saying, how do we develop chips that can go into multiple storytelling with multiple, say the Mahabharata, right? It could have 1 million endings. When are we going to have a chip? Are we ever going to have a chip that allows this dissemination of content in a way that each can take a different path and each can come to a different way and a different ending, or no endings? Is it possible? How much of your time goes in saying, that's the way to go, and we should design chips for that in technology companies?
I think in theory we are there because my background is in, as Nishith mentioned, in artificial intelligence. Almost 15 years ago, I looked at how artificial intelligence technology adapts to the user's way of working in asset allocation. It's a decision-making process. So if I'm a user and I have certain background, if my system knows about my background, my ending can be tuned to my background and my perspective of the world, while somebody else's ending can tune to their background and their perspective of the world. So how you walk through the story, this system will change the story through the artificial intelligence. So as you are moving, so you have 1 million genres. The old ways of having specific genres, cowboy movies came, and then the war movies came, and the romance and chick flicks, and that's all gone. It's all history. You can have 1 million genres from the same story because everybody has a different view of the world, and this technology will change the storytelling as you going along the story. And I think that is something, the technology is there, the application is not there yet.
Teri?
With cloud filmmaking, I think that I would agree with you. I think we're already there. We're seeing all sorts of projects that our graduate students are working on. If you put a call out over the internet and say, let's say we're taking this story, and put it out globally, you will have, and you ask a question, people will provide pieces of animation, they'll provide pieces of text, they'll provide all sorts of assets that you could build into the telling of that story. And so I think that through cloud filmmaking, or crowdsourced filmmaking as some of these call it, I think we're already there and seeing some really interesting examples, of that. For the students, I wanted to go back to the marketing. I think for students now, the reality is that everybody, whether you're a film student or you're focused on television or digital media animation, or even in theater, everybody has to be a media company now. So the education that we provide is not only in terms of the creative aspect of the education, how to tell stories well, but also how to successfully navigate a very dynamic and fluid entertainment and performing arts landscape. So I think to your point about marketing, certainly that needs to be built into the education. Where I might take, since you wanted to have some controversy, I do think that marketing completely ruined the film business. I produced movies for 32 years, big feature films before I became a dean 12 years ago. And you know, it's when the marketing, you know, I began to see when the marketing team started making the decisions, that's when the industry really changed. And it started around the time of Star Wars, but it really took hold in the next decade after that. And now decisions are really made in terms of making feature films anyway at the studio level. And even at the independent level, they're being made now based on the marketing aspect. And so the essential piece of what is a film, which still is a great story well told, seems to get lost in the shuffle a lot at the studio level because the marketing has taken over. It's a fact of life, it's a reality, one has to accept it. I'm not saying you shouldn't know about marketing, but I am saying it has completely changed the dynamic of how stories are created, how they're sold, how they're distributed. And it's very rare to have a very individual voice like yours get a film greenlit now. We're seeing, what I find also very interesting about going back into the content argument is that with Silicon Beach here now, Amazon, YouTube, Microsoft, we have a number of projects that we're doing with Google now. They're all coming to us to help them understand how to tell stories. They're getting into the entertainment business, but they're coming from a different worldview. And so I do embrace what you were talking about, that you have to have an intersection between the technology and the content, but the technology has to be at the service of, in our case, the storytelling or the performance. And, but I do think it's ironic that now with Silicon Beach here and actively working, they basically took a page out of the playbook of traditional media. They were hiring development executives. They've hired development executives out of the networks, out of the production companies, out of the studios to come and work for them to help them to understand how do you develop screenplays, how do you develop content. You know, we're finding that with YouTube. We have a wonderful partnership with them, and they're fantastic, and asking us to help their creators know how to work with the, you know, in that way. So it's a very interesting time that we're in, of transition, I think.
So
Yeah.
let's throw it open. I think somebody, you have some
Yeah, I'll just
comments,
say
and
one
then
thing
we'll
real
throw it
quick.
open.
I just think
Yeah, just give me 1 second.
Okay.
Please, I just want to acknowledge Lena. Lena, could you just stand up, please? Lena heads Asia's largest media and entertainment conference in India called FICCI. There are partners in this. It was very, very, I promised to introduce you earlier. I forgot. I'm so sorry. But welcome, Lena, and welcome, FICCI. Sorry. Please go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say, there's some things that have been discussed I agree with and some things I disagree with. One of the things I disagree with is I think the notion that content needs to be interactive and you need to like respond in real time to move a story is a little bit overblown. You know, even the younger generation, so 13 to 24 is my world. I don't know much about anybody that doesn't fit in that demographic. They still want lean back storytelling. So an example, 3 YouTubers came together earlier this year, one of which is our networker, Grace, and they made a 90-minute feature film called Camp Dakota. And there was no interactive aspect to it. It was a traditional 90-minute movie that had a nice, heartfelt story that was made with a pre-production, a production, a post-production process that is very familiar to everybody here. But what changed is how they distributed it, right? They distributed it directly to their fans. They invited them into the filmmaking process in terms of releasing stills from on set months before the feature came out. And they said, we're going to go away from the traditional distribution system. And that was the things that are changing. But we're going to make a traditional film. That movie sold $1 million in merchandise before it even came out. $1 million of Camp Dakota t-shirts. And then when it came out on iTunes and VHX, it did about $3 to $4 million in the first 2 weeks of paid downloads.
That's
and
amazing.
you know, so they put probably $500,000 into the film. That movie today, 8 months later, is still selling 1,000 units a week, with like little push because of the power of Grace, Hannah, and Mamrie in that case. So the notion that the younger generation doesn't want long form content, to me, is very naive. They want long form content. Yes, they love short form, and YouTube has created a whole world where they consume in a way that's different from traditional film and TV, but they still love great lean back entertainment. And if people think like they still go and pay for Hunger Games, they still watch Pretty Little Liars, they still watch Teen Wolf. What's changing is how those things get distributed to them. They're device agnostic. They don't think about an iPad versus a phone versus a TV. They're all the same to them. They're just like, basically they have different access to different ones based on the time of day and where they're at. That's how they think. But they still want lean back, strong storytelling, entertaining content. So to me, that's very important to understand that it's not all about just interactive is like the wave of the future. It's more about how you distribute it and how you market it is what's changing. But they still want great content.
I have to throw it over, like,
Just one small comment, if I may.
okay, very small.
We have to understand, I think there's a difference between content and story. It's the same difference between brain and mind. Content, we create every day. How many digital pictures you take every day? That's all content. How many times you go back and watch your own pictures? So what do you do with that content? So it's not the content that is important. It's the story, how you weave all that content together to come up. So story is what is the baseline. So you can have that story in many forms. But the content itself has no meaning. I mean, think about a football game, World Cup match. Millions of people watching at the time it's happening. How many people go back and watch it again? Right?
I watch Pele's goals all the time.
So,
So,
that's a story.
Yeah, we're gonna have to take, yeah, please come in and create chaos. I'm not gonna select.
Okay.
Yeah, you select.
I think let's start, Ken.
Yes.
Thank you. Just give 1 minute or so, because we want as many questions, to be responded as possible. You can press the button, you can hear. Thank you.
I was on a plane yesterday, and a woman a few aisles in front of me was watching a subtitled foreign film on her telephone, which blew me away. My question may be starting with you, Shekhar. 90% of what we've heard is about one-on-one interaction, content on a device of some kind. How, as a storyteller, do you need to modify what you're doing, mindful of you've always made films for the audience experience, 500 people sitting in a room laughing, crying, whatever. Now you're talking about one-on-one media. How do you change, or will you change what you do?
I'm going to let the panel take that, but yes, that's a question I've thought about often, and I just justify that by saying that when I send a tweet out, it's over 850,000 people that are reading it. So I find myself saying that in this world there is another kind of sharing that happens that doesn't have to be in the same room. I can't hear them laugh, but when I see all the retweets, I know they're laughing together somehow, and they see each other's retweets. So it's a different paradigm that's happening through the connectivity of the internet. But I'm going to throw that over.
Yeah, I'd like to address that. I think we talk about content and stories. I just think the technologies that we have now have created a revolution, and we are probably at the paramount level of storytelling creation. I mean, I look at some of our shows, Mad Men as a show, for instance. 20 years ago, you had no HD, you had no surround sound. You would create a cardboard backdrop was your set. And now, if you watch Mad Men, it's all about the elegance of the selection of precise, actual antiques from the 1960s. Everything now is so immersive that you have to bring your game up to a new level of storytelling. So I think we've never been in a better time for telling stories. However, I think it's under threat. I think the internet is, like it's done to a lot of industries, people pay a lot of money for quality content. And the snags in this business, digital or otherwise, has allowed for very bloated business models to occur that allows us to put $4 or $5 million into an episode of television. Will this new generation, who doesn't have to pay for $200 a month for a cable subscription in the US, will they be able to support this type of luxury that we've had in terms of resources and wealth, creating this great content. So people have never been hungrier for great stories. The technology is enabling people to create the best stories, yet I think the technology risks destroying the economic basis for telling high-quality stories, and I worry about that in the future.
They will pay.
Anil Banari?
I mean, sorry, real quick, they 100% will pay. Yeah.
No.
Go ahead.
No. There's a button to be pressed.
Mihir said that creativity is paramount, more important than the content. I think it's content creativity, not creativity of content, because you can be watching a football game and never want to watch it again, and there's a lot of content created which people never watch. So it's content creativity which is paramount. And technology has become the medium of distribution of the technology, of that content. Now, there are two questions I have. One is, what is the future of cable versus going internet? You can stream and you can watch on mobile devices and so on. Do you think is cable going to exist as we know it now with the pay boxes and so on? That's one. And two, why has not the technology been used by the movie producers, like Netflix is used for House of Cards, or other Amazon is used for some of them. Let's say a James Bond movie is made and it's released on internet and paid for at a certain time by the various people around the world. Wouldn't that become a monumental economic phenomenon for that particular movie, because there'll be a lot of people watching the movie, not only at that time, but subsequently also. So they have three ways of watching it. One, they could go to the movie theaters. Two, they could watch it on buying it on Netflix or whatever. And third is just paying for it on PayPal and watching it on their own device, whatever the mobile device or so on.
Oh,
So
sure,
two
that-
questions, future
sure.
of cable, and second is the monetizing of movie industry.
Well, all over the world, the time between the release of the film and it coming on cable or any other device is getting shorter and shorter. So I would not imagine that the time when they actually release together on every device together is that far away. It's been on the cards for years. It just hasn't happened because the way the structures exist, because the theatrical distributors will fight against it because their business will be threatened. So there's a lot of structural changes that will have to take place for that against some.
That's why.
So-
I'll let
Somebody else had a,
Yeah.
I just have
maybe-
I have a
Yes.
real-world
They would have some.
example. I worked at MGM for
Stand up and
10
fight.
years, and we had this conversation about Casino Royale, the first one with Daniel Craig. The conversation was, wouldn't this be different if we just offered it pay-per-view or on the internet, $50 to watch, like a fight, a boxing match or something like that? So the conversation happened, and it's very imaginative, and it could be very lucrative, but to your point, the structures just prohibited that. It's just, it freaked people out too much to even consider that, and it wound up just being an entertaining conversation and nothing more than that. But it
Can I
could have been a
answer
bigger business
This
model.
is the first question on the future of cable. So, what is Netflix? Most people would describe Netflix as a subscription video on demand platform for everybody, a Walmart of long form video. I would argue that Netflix is the first unbundled cable channel. That to me, within 5 years, is what Netflix is going to be. As more real entrants and buyers enter the over-the-top space, Netflix is naturally going to have to get more narrow with their selection of programming. They won't be able to have exclusivity on everything. They've had a monopoly on that for a few years because they're the only major streaming player. But there's more competition. Today with Hulu, Amazon Prime, there's a lot more in the mix. And as more competition enters that space, they won't renew exclusivity on everything. So they're going to have to choose what they renew exclusivity on. They're going to have to invest in originals that they've been doing. And they're going to become a brand. And they're going to become a cable channel unbundled. And what's going to happen is, right along the times that's really clear, is when HBO is going to become unbundled. And those two are going to compete head on. And over time, more and more cable channels will be unbundled. Within 10 years, AMC will be an unbundled channel. Unbundled meaning that,
We hate the idea.
I'm sorry, but that's where I think it's going. And unbundled mean the carriage fees are going to be over. It doesn't mean that linear distribution is over, because I still think there will be a market for that, an ad-supported linear distribution market and a pure video-on-demand subscription market. And I think you'll get AMC and FX and TNT in both ways, but the carriage fee business will deteriorate. And I think Netflix is the first unbundled cable channel in my mind.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you
Yeah.
just said. I think it's going to be, what will stay bundled will be live sports, because I think that's much harder to unbundle.
Live news and events.
Live news and events, sports, and then you're going to have Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, HBO Go, and probably, 10 other unbundled packages. And the reality is, I think people will still pay just as much as they always have. Because going back to something you said, young people, they don't mind paying for content. I think that's a myth. They just hate their cable company, and they hate the crappy user experience and the way they're treated on the telephone.
Or the parents' credit card.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Bruce,
but
you
that-
had
but
some
but that's
response.
the threat to the business model, as much as I like that world as a consumer you're describing, the entertainment business, if you look at the music business, if you look at TV business, it's all based on, 10 failures for every hit. This world that you're describing allows for no failure and just a few sources of content. In other words, the bundled model provides enough luxury of money to take risk and chances and have failures. In this new world, there's 4 or 5 channels. We're going to become a world of less choice and a few brands. And it's scary to me.
Well, isn't that ironic? Now we're going back to NBC, ABC, and CBS. I mean, everything's sort of back to the future. And at the end of the day, again, my world is to nurture and develop the creators of the future, the storytellers of the future. That's what we do. And as I've seen the business models change. I've seen the technology change every other Tuesday. I mean, having been in the business for 32 years as a producer before I became a dean, things changed quite dramatically over time. And what I saw over the years was a constant, and that is young people telling stories, and even established storytellers adapted to whatever the technologies were, adapted to whatever the emerging business models were, and people figured out a way to still tell their stories very, very well. So I think that we can't forget about that, about nurturing, developing a new generation that has a sense of wonder, a sense of curiosity about the origins of stories and ideas. Picasso's paintbrushes didn't paint the painting. Picasso painted it. Are you an interesting person? What do you have to say? What is your worldview? And then our job is to help young people adapt to the changing models as they're emerging. And I do hope that we do get an intersection of the new emerging technologies and new narrative structures. And I think the first place that figures out what those new narrative structures are is going to be quite far ahead. I mean, binge watching, for example, it's really interesting that we're back to the novel, really. I mean, serialized television is just, binge watching till 2 in the morning, and I put myself right in there. Orange is the New Black, Orphan Black, and I think social media has helped to get where the shared experience, to your point, and what social media has done is allowed audiences to find and discover those shows and really propel them forward. It's been very interesting to see what's happened in the last couple of years. But I think right now the new narrative structure is like reading the novel. Serialized storytelling is a very interesting experience now, and people love it.
So,
Thank you.
There's so many questions.
yeah,
coming.
as a graduate.
Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah,
and-
my name is Iram Parveen Bilal. I'm a filmmaker, originally from Pakistan, but I graduated from USC Film School. So my question is going to have the backdrop that we have very good storytellers. Let's just presume that. And it seems to me, just from hearing everything you're saying, is what James said, is that people are basically forcing us to bring our game on. So it's pull programming as opposed to push programming, right? So we can complain about monetizing distribution and YouTube and all of that. I think the other, where the convergence isn't happening, is that the cost of production for the cheapest film is really high still. So my question to you is, it seems to me what is resisting the convergence really is a lot of ego and moneymakers and profiteers because I feel they're really, really good filmmakers and storytellers, and that's where your diversity of voice is dying, because the studios will make, not just the studios, a lot of people make a lot of expensive films and then throw a huge P&A behind it, which is still forcing things down the throats of those teenagers that then don't go and watch what's in the theaters and would rather just go pay like $2 for their films. So you make a really good film, but it's only being downloaded for $2.99 in iTunes, but the cheapest film is really hard to make because the best stars and the marketing drivers are still costing a lot. So how do you bring your cost of production to meet? I mean, is there a lot of ego? Will that ever happen? When do you see that happening?
Okay, we have, anybody take that? I don't think the YouTubers spend a lot of time on it, but anybody want to take that on?
So you're saying there's egos in Hollywood?
Better write that down.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the question on like where do you cut costs, it sounds like you're more on above the line than below the line question, right? Because below the line is a whole different world of technology that's going to sort of continue to make that more efficient.
Just use this.
Yeah. You know, I think the world of meaningful talent is starting to change too. It's not necessarily about you know, the big traditional, the Tom Cruise, the Will Smiths anymore. You see, like, I mean, how many Adam Sandler movies have flopped over and over again recently? You know, I think what celebrity is being redefined as well. We see a lot of times the talent in our world being cast in things because of their social footprint. They don't have the same costs necessarily of a traditional actor. And I will caution you that I could probably count on both hands the number of YouTubers that have range as actors. So, like, people rush into like casting YouTubers into their movies, and they wonder why they don't get the right finished product. But there are some that, you know, doing that, and it's happening more and more. It's just, I think you have to sort of go into a project understanding how you're going to distribute it and monetize it, and building a budget accordingly that allows you to do that. So if you're making a big studio film, you know what that is, you know what sort of that entails and the risk of doing it. If you're making a sketch comedy video with your friends in your apartment and distribute it on YouTube, you know, you can forecast what you're probably going to make out of that. And, you know, making the economics work accordingly. It's not a perfect science. It's never going to be. Content is a hits-driven business. Whether you're a YouTuber or a studio, it's a hits-driven business. And there's so many YouTube channels that are massively successful, and you look at it and you're like, why the hell is this thing successful? You know, you scratch your head. And there's great content on YouTube that never gets the views to monetize. And, you know, we find it all the time in great web series. And I was in a class last week in USC, and there's 2 students in that class that made great web series that I knew of that had no monetization, that we recently licensed for other purposes. And, you know, it's a hits-driven business, and there's no science to it. Like, it's hard.
I'm talking about
Other question? Oh, sorry, you want?
If I answer a little bit.
Yeah, 30
I
seconds.
think we are not talking about the old movies going away, at least in my view. There will be avatars of the world, where a lot of money has gone into production, a lot of new technology has been used, and it has a compelling story that people love watching. So there will be those, just like horses and buggies are still there in Central Park, right? But what is different is there are a lot of new things happening. I forgot the name of the movie, but I still remember that there was a flashlight on a face in a scary movie, which was made with Blair Witch Project, exactly. Thank you so much, long time back. Become extremely successful because there was some interesting thing to talk about. So the cost has nothing to do with what you say, how you say it, right? There will be movies who are huge budget. There will be cable. 10 years ago, I was teaching in NYU's technology management program, and we talked about the death of cable, copper. It's still there. It is evolving. So things will evolve. Old stuff will still remain, but the mind share, in my view, will change. There will be increasingly, they will be getting less of mind share as opposed to the new ways of
Thank
you
Mihir.
so much.
Nishith and I have a telepathic way of speaking to each other, and what he's saying to me is, your time's up. So, is there any other
There is a
question?
gentleman there, he's standing. He's a very modest person, so he's hiding in the dark. So,
I'm hanging in the
please
shadows.
Introduce yourself. Be very brave.
Very quick.
And
So,
all of us will be also Very brief.
Very good panel, so thanks for being here. The life cycle, that's the thing no one's discussing here. This extends the life cycle if you play this. My name is Mitch Mallon. I actually launched the Agami Media Service, Image Entertainment, back in the early days of digital distribution in 2005, so one of the first into the marketplace. But the life cycle, this is the best way for filmmakers to actually extend the life cycle of product if everything is played properly. It's not a done in 8 weeks scenario. That's part of the windowing. If you put everything out at the exact same time, that actually negates making money most of the time. A hit's a hit, but you actually have to build on that. So how do you look at the life cycle being extended on content going forward for most of the platforms and for content makers as well?
Yeah. Quick answers?
So the windows are collapsing because of the pressure of the new technologies and the amount of money sometimes offered in silly ways by new entrants. But I keep going back to the economic base of the business. We need these long tail revenues. That's the only way we can ever get a return on the amount of money invested in production. The typical big movie or TV series, you do a 10-year ultimate business plan and you look at all your revenue streams. So it is a big challenge right now. But that said, we've all talked about it. The premium quality content will survive. People are still watching Blair Witch, and they're still watching James Bond films, and they'll watch it every way as long as the story's good. It could, hopefully remain evergreen. But that's the key, and that model, though, is under some challenge now, given all the new technologies, I think.
Any other question? Any more questions?
Oh, yes. Name and quick.
Based in LA, but we manage a film fund in India which is active in distribution. The young lady asked a question here about how to make that type of content, and Mike, I think, answered the question just by raising his device that he had in his hand. And really, that is, to me, a very sensible answer, because the technology enables the creation of the content. If you don't have the content, you can't commercialize or monetize it, and you can't figure out ways to go over the top of the conventional channels to get monetization of the content, then you're not going to make the content. Commercial films in India, tell good stories, but they have poor production values. Why? Because there's just not enough monetization of it. And if we can find ways to go over the top of the conventional infrastructure and monetize that content, then we can make more content. Commercial, smaller, boutique, different stories can get told.
Actually, not all art. There is a theory which says not all art is done to last. My grandmother used to tell me incredible stories. I didn't ask her the next day, Grandmom, how are you going to monetize it? How's it going to last long? And I learned most of my storytelling from her. So there is just another completely different theory saying that's not what you have to do. If you want to tell a story, just tell a story. Why do you say, I want to monetize it? I just want to tell a story sometimes. Sorry, I just said that.
Yeah.
Is there any other question? Just put it
I
just
think AVT
provoking
has,
everybody to say something.
AVT, very quick.
Yes.
You have about 2.5 minutes to go.
The only question is that, you've talked about content and creativity and marketing being king, but what I've gotten at the end of it is that it's quality. And my question is that in this fast space, just as the Chinese started making vehicles and the Americans and Germans said, but they're faster, they're cheaper, but the quality's taken a hit. In this fast space and in the speed with which we're evolving, is quality taking a hit?
I think quality is being redefined. So
Yeah.
more than taking a hit. I mean, what is quality, right? I mean, in my world, you'd look at everything on YouTube and say it's poor quality. You'd ask that 17-year-old that has a relationship with that YouTuber and that content, and they say it's the most important thing in their life. So I think it's just being redefined. I think it's not defined as special effects or how stylized the finished product is anymore. So that to me, it's different. It's personalized.
It's how you relate. My 13-year-old daughter relates to somebody called Superwoman.
Yeah.
I don't, I just like, if you look at the quality, you wonder what's going on. It's like,
She's the best. She's my favorite YouTuber.
Yeah. And
She's
for those of
hilarious.
you that come from India, she came onto stage at a YouTube conference in Mumbai, and Shah Rukh Khan was booed off the stage because they wanted to see Superwoman because they were teenagers.
She's legit.
Yeah, she's legit, she's new. And you know what you find? It's not content quality, it's how you relate. Can you relate to your audience? Are you reaching out to them? Can they reach out to you? That's all that quality matters. If my story is not reaching you, I can take the best DOP in the world, the greatest lighting and the biggest visual effects. There's nothing that's going to happen. I can take one actor, shoot one actor sitting in one place for half an hour, and if that actor can actually grip you and relate to you, and you can reach out to them and they reach out to you, it's great content. It's high quality content.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi just did that day before.
Yeah, high quality content.
A single audience, whole 1.5, 2 hours. I think there is a comment. Please be a little quick, introduce yourself.
My name is. The question I have is, we're talking about monetization, and I guess this is for Teri particularly. How are we teaching the young storytellers that they're going to earn a living from this storytelling? I have a daughter in art school. She's a photographer and a filmmaker, and to some extent she's made her name on the internet with many of her friends. But they rarely get paid for anything they do. There's an idea that everything should be free. People write stories and they're told, well, it's good for you that the story be published on our website and so on. Are there new skills that they need to learn? I certainly know that everybody not only needs to be their own company, they need to be their own brand, and they need to be their own celebrity, so that sponsors and advertisers seek them out and want to pay them to do things. But what other skills can they develop to actually earn a living?
Well, first of all, if you're going to have a life in the arts, then you have to accept that it's going to be a much more challenging road than if you go to medical school, law school, or business school, where there's a direct career path. So again, I'm talking about artists and creators, but not those who are getting MBAs or law degrees.
Thank you.
So in the life of the arts is a challenge to start with. And we are very realistic about that with our students, both undergrads and graduate students. But the way our curriculum is designed, it is designed to take our students not only through the creative process, but to understand the realities of the entertainment and performing arts industries, the creative industries. So they have internships, they have fellowships. We have very robust classes in producing that take into account financing, marketing, what the distribution landscape looks like. We have classes that are geared towards festival strategies. Our students do not go out the door without having a really good understanding of what the landscape and the changing in this dynamic, fluid, changing landscape is. And so like USC, we have the benefit of location. We're here in Los Angeles, so we have access to over 1,000 internships, for example, in the city that go across the networks and the studios, production companies, YouTube, Google, Amazon. It's really quite robust. So we take a very holistic approach to the education for our students, and that when they go out the door, it's not goodbye at graduation. We're there for them, especially in those very critical first years out the door, years 1 through 5. And we have mentorship programs, fellowship programs, and we match up new young alums with established alums from our school, which are a considerable alumni network. So taking that very multidimensional, holistic approach, that it's not just enough to be an artist, but you have to be an artist armed with a tremendous amount of knowledge going at the door and skill sets, and we build that into the curriculum. So,
sorry, Teri.
Thank you.
So that's the
You
answer.
talked about artists. I got
Yeah.
a little story to tell.
Yeah.
May I tell a little story about Van Gogh? Who's not heard of Van Gogh?
Yep. So, Shekhar, you asked me one question in the beginning, I think. IP is going to last for one more day, right? So how do you monetize?
Yeah.
That was the question, I think.
No,
I
let me tell you about Van Gogh first. Okay. So Van Gogh used to paint about, miners, coal miners, poor people, desperate people, and nobody would pay for the paintings. His brother was one of the biggest art collectors in Paris at that time. He said, you know what? You really want to sell your paintings? You want to make a living? You should be painting landscapes. The fashion in thing is landscapes. He painted the sunflower. He painted some of those fantastic paintings. You stand in front of them and you feel the stress and the madness in his mind. But he did what his brother said. Okay, I'll paint landscapes. You'll get a completely different. There's an idea about marketing in there that you can learn from his paintings. which I thought was an incredible story, and nobody seems to clap. But anyway, so we have to go for lunch. The one thing I want to ask everybody is we're going to do this thing next year again. And we've had a brilliant panel. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Yeah, and I hope that we can continue. I know Nishith is going to ask me about IP, but it's going to come up again because, yeah, IP is something that we hated. You know, the Bible was never into that. There was no IP on the Bible. There was no IP on the Quran. There was no IP on the Mahabharata. There's a whole
Shekhar, I don't know how you will monetize, but lawyers will certainly.
No, I think lawyers are,
within one day,
lawyers,
how do you will all
yeah, lawyers will run out of business.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so thank you so much. What I would request you to do is give us some ideas for the next year's conference. What's a good time for us to get together like this? Is this a good time, September, October? Just end of September, is this a good time? Is March a good time, or December a good time, or what? Any thoughts? How many of you think this is just about the right time, end September, early October? Okay. Any other view? Okay. So I think this seems to be reasonable time, right? Okay, great. Number one. Any other idea, any other suggestion that you have? How can we make it a little more interesting? Anyone would like to extend any support in any possible way or collaborate?
Invite Beyonce.
Little louder. Yeah. And your name?
My name is Mukesh, and I would suggest you reach out to people like Superwoman and have her on the panel in the future.
What's that?
Reach out to people like Superwoman or PewDiePie or Toby Turner, who are YouTube stars.
I'll get Superwoman on the panel.
All right, done.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Any other? Okay.